Welcome to episode 6 of 5DT Time. I'm your co-host, Crystal Kristen, with...
And I'm Lindsay Love.
Yay. So happy to be here with you, Lindsay, and with all of our viewers. I think our last video got some more views. We got really excited about that. So if you like us, if you like what you see in here, share with your friends.
Yes, please.
Yeah, so today our topic is work and play. And I want to offer the conversation for you to start, Lindsay. We were talking about the attitude of play and how that attitude of play, just like children, just brings us into the joy of our heart. And when we're in the joy of the heart, that is the fifth dimensional vibration, very creative space. And the energy of work is a very low, heavy, top down kind of slave system vibration, right? And I'm just curious, what this almost, I don't know if it's like a dichotomy, but if you have what you have to say about play and infusing that into work, or how you might marry those two concepts together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it's interesting, even when you're saying both words, play and work, there's an energetic vibration that goes with both. The play is like play. My eyes want to light up, my hands want to go out, play. Oh, we're gonna go play. What are we gonna do today? We're gonna go play. And then there's the energy of what are we gonna do today? I'm going to work. It's just that kind of sludgy, drags you down kind of energy. And so how I think ultimately, can we marry the two together? Can we combine the two would be the ultimate to move into the 5D, because work can be a beautiful part of life, but it's all about the energy behind things. So if we change the energy behind work to be like, oh, I'm going to go play at work today. Like, I'm going to go to work today. I love work. I enjoy work. I'm going to play. I'm going to make it fun. There's a completely different vibration to that. And so for me, 3D to 5th dimension is all about energy. And energetically, the transformation from one point to the other point. And 3-dimensional vibration is a lot lower of a frequency energetically, whereas 5-dimensional is quite a bit higher. So how do we transform this concept of work from like work, where the shoulders fall, like the posture falls, the heart kind of closes off, work, to work, how do we transform that? But so I think that's an important piece of it all, is that transformation of that vibrational energy behind the word work. But if we can infuse play into our work life, how much more enjoyable it would be. And I loved your example of a child, basically, because children really have it dialed in when it comes to joy and creativity and exploration of the world, right? So I love seeing the world through a child's eyes, of like seeing something for the very first time. It's brand new. You've never seen it before. It's exciting. What does this thing do? How does it work? What is that? Who is that? So lots of questions come along with it. And so that energy is one of playfulness, of exploration, of excitement about life. And then it seems as we go through life, the play becomes lesser and lesser and lesser, and the work becomes more and more of a dominant theme. And so, I feel like we lose a lot of that childlike playfulness, that childlike spirit, as we progress through life and work and move more into work. And then it's harder to transition out of the work back into play, and having those times throughout the day or throughout the week where we make time for play, we make time for fun, we make time for joy. And then sometimes we can find ourselves getting caught in this cycle of just work, 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 work. And
Mhm.
the play is absent from our lives. And energetically, being in those spaces, and I know we all have, it's just one of, life becomes kind of, okay, I get up every day. This is what I do. I go to work, I do this, I come home, I get my to-do list done, and then I go to bed. But if we can pause and infuse some play into our lives, some play into the day, some play into the weekend, it shifts things altogether. So it breaks up the work cycle, but then it also makes work more enjoyable when we go back to it, because energetically we're fed, we're replenished because we had that joyful, playful moment.
Mhm.
So ultimately, having more play in our lives makes our work more enjoyable, I think. I went off on a few tangents there, but Kristen, I'm curious. What do you think?
No, I love all the tangents, and it all, yeah, fits beautifully together. I mean, they even make songs, work, 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 or whatever that Rihanna song, like
Exactly. That's exactly the song that came to
celebrated,
mind.
right? When you were saying
Work,
that,
work,
like,
work,
oh,
work, work.
yeah, it's like, oh my gosh, it's sex. It becomes like sexy to be a slave, It's like,
Yeah.
oh,
Oh,
like somehow like slavery is like hot, It's like, no,
yeah.
I mean, okay, maybe in like, the synthetic matrix, which
Yeah. The lower dimensional,
mhm.
yeah, thought processes and frequencies. Yeah, maybe it is
Yeah, it
sexy.
appeals to that animal instinct, those lower frequencies that the body does produce.
Mhm.
It is like a biochemistry that becomes like addicted and attached to that slave system. So it's like, fed by it, gives to it, and its addictions are satisfied, but then it needs more because it's never deeply satisfied because the soul is disconnected. And like for me, like play is soul connection, like the energy of like the child's connected to the soul. And then what happens, a child goes through the Rockefeller education system. I'm going straight into it here.
Oh, do it, girl. Let's do
Yeah.
it.
Oh,
Let's
I
get
love it.
real world here. I love this.
Right?
It's
But
so
it's
true.
like,
The
okay,
indoctrination. Yeah.
here's your desk, here's the pattern, the formula, here's the fast track to get the advanced credits to get to call, that
Yeah.
whole.
Here are the subjects we're going to learn about. No diverting from the box.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And it's, here's the testing and the test scores, and here's our range of normal, and that's what we're shooting for, above average, or, all of these things. And it all of a sudden, like the soul's like, you know,
Mm.
it's not playing anymore, it's definitely like in the ladder climbing achievement piece, which, there is the sense of like I'm just holding the realm of possibility and potential that education and learning does not have to be soul fragmenting. Like these
Mm.
achievements are wonderful, but not at the cost of the soul, And so the higher pressurized, the system gets for performance and for it to be, the kids coming in now, you know, this old system is just, the kids are suffering, inside the system even more and more because they have their energies are so big. It was difficult for us, and it's like even more for these youth now. And they're just like these incredible star beings. And so this energy of play definitely gets like siphoned, into, like putting a square peg into a round hole, you know, and somehow you have to like fit into that round hole, whether you like it or not, if you're going through, you know, more
Yeah.
mainstream education. And this isn't like a, a blame or shame on any teachers. Oh my gosh, I had incredible teachers and incredible mentorship all
Mhm.
throughout the way, and that's what saves the children is, you know, the good teachers for sure, that give them that sense of like safety and all is well, and where the play can still come through the classroom and all of that. um, but for me it's like really about like almost like reclaiming your child, your inner child, you know, and like bringing that, really holding space for her and for him to come through and kind of reactivate that, and giving it space to be on the playground of life and to create and um you know, whistle while you work. You know, I love the Seven Dwarfs, Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs for that. You know, it's like whistle while you work, you know, just like bring the vibration up just through what's moving through your creative spirit. um I went off on tangents hugely. I was all over the place there.
Oh, no, that was so good. That was perfect. I was going to comment on how brilliant that was. Are you finished? I don't want to
Yeah,
interrupt.
totally. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, that's
So yes, yes, and yes. I love that you went right to the schooling system because there is this kind of suppressing of the soul a little bit. And I know that sounds awful, but it is kind of okay, sit here at your desk, like you were saying, fit into this box, learn these subjects, do this, do that, perform on this test the way we would like you to, get up in front of the class, and you're only allowed to talk about these certain things, or these are the only topics that we're going to breach. Where is the creative exploration? Where is the critical thinking?
mhm,
Where is that?
mm,
The critical thinking is the most concerning to me, but the creativity as well. But then you see how it produces this cycle later on in life, and you were talking about the addictive quality of the working nature within us, right? So, and equating that almost to slavery, and
mhm.
and it is in a way because we live in this society where we we grasp onto how do I say, like we're so excited about achievement, right, and getting as far as we can, and a lot of times that comes with monetary value or fame or being known by a lot of people. And so we get into this cycle of like, oh, I gotta achieve more, I gotta do more, I gotta do more, and it's this work cycle. And and there's nothing wrong with that mindset, but generally it is void of joy and play. Generally it's like, okay, what's next? I got to check that off my to-do list. Okay, now I got to do this, now I got to do that. And we almost become robotic in a
The
sense.
survival mode. We're still like we're activated in the survival mechanism.
Precisely. And
Minimalized. Mhm.
we thought that we've grown beyond that. Like we're such evolved beings, right? Like we're so incredible because our food and our water and our shelter is all provided for us. And that should enable us to really flourish and prosper, and creativity should be off the charts, and philosophy and science and all these studies, and which they are. But then in a lot of senses, like, are we that evolved if we're so, if we succumb to this kind of enslaved state so easily, right? And so I can really only attribute it to schooling and indoctrination and what has happened throughout our childhoods. But it almost becomes this addiction, right? To achieve, to produce, to provide value to the society.
Mhm.
And and oftentimes, like I said, providing that value or achieving it coincides perfectly, or it's one with lack or a void of playfulness and joy and the connection with the soul. And in a place of play and joy comes the creativity, comes the ability to critically think, because you're able to look at the world and the issues and the challenges from a higher perspective.
Mhm.
And also I would say play is the ability to connect with Great Spirit, to access God or the universe or creator. So when we get into these cycles of work, 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 then we really lose out on a fundamental part of what makes us human.
Mhm.
Is our connection with spirit, our creativity, our reason for living ultimately.
Yeah, and there is this sense with, the work, it's almost like you're in servitude or you're serving this thing in this world, like whether
Mm,
it's the boss or the institution or just the system. And when we're in this like attitude of play and like creation, there's still great achievement. It's not void. I mean, it's like the realm of possibility gets bigger and wider and broader. And like your service is more lined up with source, with
mm,
God, with the creator, with the great spirit, however the word is for you to use for that. But there is more of a sourcing of energy that is from the channel of free energy, source energy. And there's just,
mm.
I mean, even what we're doing here, it's not for like, it's kind of the joy of just connecting because we like to connect and be together. But there is just this like joy of talking, of expressing. There is this sense of and this is the highlight of my week because I really look forward to like the heart connection, right? The heart connection. It's it really yeah, it just feels like my inner child's so happy that I'm taking action on my creativity and to just really be able to connect with other people, in a similar frequency way. People who are attracted to our frequency are gonna be the ones that are tuning into the channel. So we're like building community and I think that's kind of like our soul's nature to be communal and to be connected and to love and support one another and cheerlead each other on, because it's like another thing about work is it's highly competitive, almost in like a me versus the world way,
Mhm.
where like play is like go Lindsay go, and like
So
it's
favorite.
celebrating, we're like cheerleaders for each other, where it's like, oh, it's
Mhm,
cooperative,
mhm.
and
Yeah,
it's like when you gain, I gain too. When you succeed, I'm succeeding too. Like when your consciousness pops open, that brings more possibility for mine to pop open. When you step more into like wealth abundant consciousness, like that shows me I can too. It's just like there's not a lack,
yeah,
it's
yeah.
like,
Inspiring rather than competing.
yeah,
Supporting, inspiring rather than competing. Yeah.
yeah,
Mm.
yeah. Play versus work. It's like just work feels very singular and play feels more collective, to be honest,
Yeah.
as I'm kind of feeling into it, because like where two or more gather, there too am I, the sayings of Yeshua. And so it's interesting. It is like, yeah, it lightens the load
Mhm.
for sure, just to collaborate. And that feels, and there's no like job that's like fifth dimensional or third dimensional. It's not like, oh, the kind of work is like 3D or 5D. Like you can
Mhm.
totally be 5D and do like the recycling pickup and trash pickup. Like, or
Yeah.
is that man whistling and is he like smiling and vibing and like jazzed about, Monday morning at 5 a.m.? Yeah, there are enlightened trash men, right? So,
Yeah.
gosh, people, not that they're all men, I don't know. It's not what we do, it's like how the vibrational energy quality, like you were saying earlier, differentiates the dimensional frequency bands. So,
Yeah, something came to mind when you were talking, and you were talking about how play is more in the collective, whereas work is more individual. And then we have this concept of like work being in the energy more of competition in my mind, and play is more support and inspiration. And
mhm.
so it made me think of when I started traveling. And they always said, oh, you'll have culture shock. It'll because I did a lot of traveling in third world countries. And so, and a lot of indigenous populations. And so it was like people would always say, oh, you're going to have culture shock when you get there, just take some time, allow yourself to adapt and assimilate into the culture. And I'm like, okay. So I was prepared for that. Right. And it was so odd because when I would get there, I would just adapt so easily. I'm like, oh, this feels like home. And it's a strange sensation, but I think a lot of the places I traveled to, there was more of that playful, joyful living because people were more living in that childlike nature of play rather than work, 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 work. So
Because the child, like they're in the now. That's the
yes.
piece. They're like in the, were you going to say that? I didn't mean to
No,
take.
but I'm glad because even in Indonesia, their language, like the village Indonesian, and just that, like not academic Indonesian, but village Indonesian, they don't even have words that go for way far in the future or way far in the past.
Mhm.
In the language itself, the words are mostly like, oh, a couple weeks that way, a couple weeks that way, but mostly all in the now, which is fascinating. So yeah, you're absolutely right.
And like the work is much more like, oh, I need to plan for my future. I need it, so people are just like aging themselves, clocking out their time, making these, long-term plans that might not ever live to, but it's all this, yeah, it's a lot of just linear pressure. And the now, is expansive. And in a sense, the now does see it can see and it can perceive a range, but it's not so lockstep. Boom. I just feel like 3D is like dum, 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 dum.
Yeah.
you
Don't
know?
divert, don't divert, don't divert. Keep going. Yeah.
And
Don't
like
expand. Mm.
5D is more, yeah, just like there's expansion and contraction. So there is focus and then it comes out and it feels like the heartbeat, you know?
Yeah, and the
So
breath.
it does like hone and then it widens to see the view. It's much more biorhythmic, much more rhythmic in its nature, it feels like, as we're talking about it.
Biorhythmic is a really good word for it. So yeah,
Mm.
just to kind of come full circle with the indigenous people's part of the travel. It's like,
Mhm.
whoa, I feel home here. This feels good. Like this feels good in my soul. There was a community and everybody is supporting one another. And, there was time to just be and to talk and to connect and to play. And the children were all playing. And so, it resonated honestly more with me than did living in America or being in America where I was from, where I was, making to-do list every day and trying to scratch everything off and achieve these goals. And I'm not knocking either. It's both. It's so beautiful to have been able to experience both. But what I found, and I told my dad this the other day too, is like, as soon as I would get on the plane to come home to America, I was writing to-do lists on the plane. Like, okay, I got to do this when I get there, and I got to take care of this thing, and I got to do that. And like, what am I going to do next? And, what's next? Because, oftentimes after a long travel, I would have to kind of restart life again in a lot of different ways. And so, and then I would get back and it would just be odd. I mean, even the energy in the airport is like, people wouldn't really look at each other in the eye. And it just, everybody was kind of internally within themselves. It didn't feel like the community. Like everybody had a direction where they were going. Like, I got to get to that plane there, that gate by this amount of time, then I got to fly there, and then I got to go give this presentation for work there. It was just all this schedule, this to-do list, this I got to get these things done, and to achieve more, to make more money for my family, to do this, that, and the other. And it was just odd because I would have more reverse culture shock coming back to America than I would going traveling to other places.
Yeah.
Specifically, like more indigenous third world communities and stuff. So I just,
Makes the third world feel a little bit more civilized, more first world. And, it's like
more evolved.
More evolved, or like they haven't like paused they haven't stopped their soul progression. I feel like something about the Western world, like the mechanization of materialization, has segmented or fragmented, I mean, of course, those of us on the path of deep soul evolution and reconnection, there's so much, available to us. But yeah, this like concept of third world and first world, or developing nations and first nation, or whatever, it's like, what is what, at a certain point, because
Exactly. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Exactly.
The individuation makes for a lot of mental illness, and, in a sense, like that individuation and kind of lonely track, or it's
Lonely.
it's lonely, and it can really stunt the evolution of the soul, and everything's a balance, because that, like, there is healthy individuation, of course, having individuation from the tribe, so you're not just the pack, you are like individuated. There's like, it's tricky because like 3D feels very much like, I didn't mean it. Did I interrupt you again?
No, I'm going to piggyback on something you just said, but you did not interrupt me at all. It was all you. And then I want to jump in after you're done, because there was one thing that came to mind too, but please continue.
Hold it, like, remember it. I'll just say one quick thing. 3D feels like more of like ego development.
Yeah.
And the biochemistries that kind of feed the ego in the man-made matrix. And then the fifth dimension feels like soul space, where you're linked into divine matrix. The ego, the 3D, is more like the lower chakras, if we're talking about the energy body. And then like the fifth is more reaching into like the higher vibratory realms of love and light. But yeah.
How would you describe, this is not what I wanted to say, but this is coming to mind then, how would you describe 4D? Is 4D kind of the in-between process of moving from, 3 to 5?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, 4D, I would say, is time. If the 3 dimensions are length, width, and height, the 4th dimension is time, and the 5th dimension is love. It's a vibrational frequency of love, not of romantic love, or just the unionizing love with the breeze and the birds and the trees. It's that bhakti energy of divine union and connection with the life force that flows through you and me and all of life here in creation. And a connection to the primary source of that chi, of that life force, that unites us. So I would say the 4th is time, and time is a concept that is, within this like dimension. I don't know. It's like this like sector of the universe. I think it's like an earth thing. Maybe it extends beyond Earth. I don't know, but time seems to be something that came in to Earth at some point and put us more on a linear track than it does seem like a lot of these indigenous cultures had more of an understanding of cosmology as a reference to time and like larger cycles, not so much the time we're clocking to produce for a man-made mechanism that's making a lot of money and, you know, mining the planet.
Yeah.
So it feels like the way we're clocking time does kind of feel artificial. So it's like the 4D, it's like
it's true.
4D can lean more towards 3D, where it's like, you know, going into like the lower dimensions, even into the second dimension of like serving these almost demonic forces, like kind of feeding off of the planetary energy. Or like time can be more expansive and like move into like more cyclical, where you're moving more into like that higher realm of 5D. So like 4D might have that like choice point of how we orient ourselves inside of time. The fifth is a little bit more space than like and more perhaps processing the cycles through the system as kind of like an osmosis almost, rather than like mental. Something like that might not be, you know, exactly correct, but that's just kind of how I'm processing it now. Well, what were you gonna say?
Yeah, no, it makes a lot of sense. Like I see fourth as kind of like that awareness point of being in more ego-based world, moving into more loving world. And it's kind of like that go between, that shift between of like awareness of, okay, I've been kind of existing here and I want to get there, but this is the process, because there's a process in between of, and sometimes we're shifting in 1 hour or 10 minutes between all three, and maybe lower, maybe even higher, but to get to the 5D on a more permanent basis, right? We have to go through that process of the realization of what's occurring in the 3D, and then transforming and transmuting it in order to get to the 5D. And so there, like the time is a piece of that for sure. And living in the now is more of a 5D concept to me. And so when you talk about indigenous cultures, a lot of indigenous cultures have belief systems and creation stories and prophecies that allude to a fifth world. The Hopis have one of the fifth world, and they also don't see time as linear. Hopis, they have a spiral as their time, which conceptually is kind of like a whole other conversation for a whole other time. But the thing that I wanted to piggyback on that you said before, and it was, you know, the kind of the feeling that I had when I was in the indigenous populations, and when I came back to America, was when I was there was one of happiness. People were generally joyful because they were in a state of play. So it felt like a higher vibrational frequency, a higher vibrational energy, more in fifth dimensional reality to me. And I think that's why I kind of longed for it, or it felt like home. It felt so beautiful. It was something that I was like wanting within me. And I found that, and not that it doesn't exist in America. I'm not saying that at all, but this is just my experience of my personal experience of how I kind of saw things. And then I would come back in America, and I would be in the airport, and I at points there were like, oh, the people were yelling at each other, or the security alert was at red because we had gone through 9/11 and all these things. And it just was so interesting, the different vibration that I was feeling in this society, where we are more individualized, more kind of self-focused, and on more of this track of linear time and working, rather than existing in the moment and making play as our predominant focus of our day.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So
Just so there was one of like the frequency was like happy and joy, and then the opposite frequency when I would come home. And that's where I think that the biggest part of the culture shock, the reverse culture shock came from was like, there is a, a psychological instability that accompanies that and you see it explode in our population. We have a lot of mental challenges as far as the psyche and the mental capacity goes, a lot of disease and sickness there. And so I really recognize that when because I feel like it's a product of the work, but like there's a loneliness there and a void and a lack of community and support. So again, a topic for another time, but
yeah, definitely. I mean, they're talking about the second pandemic being, like the mental health issues from the isolation, that were, mandated or whatever. And yeah, some people are still in that. And
yeah.
yeah, and we don't see a lot of these things out in the visual of our daily life, but these are things hidden in the cracks, that are happening behind closed doors. A lot of the stuff is like unseen, but is definitely issues on a pretty large scale, at least here in the United States. So yeah, I mean, the sense of amplifying the attitude of play and joy. It's like the most revolutionary thing. I mean, like choosing the fifth dimension is the most revolutionary thing we can do. It's like the most countercultural thing we can do is to be joyful, playful, like genuinely happy people. Like that is so worth investing your energy towards and choosing, because it's very countercultural, which I love.
Which keeps us free and not able to be controlled.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
it's beautiful. It's the ultimate freedom, I think,
Mm-hmm.
is
Mm-hmm.
to live in a state, to be free from internal conflict and to be living in a state of rebellion, of joy, and not really rebellion, but it feels a bit rebellious to
Mm-hmm.
societal norms,
Well, in the 4D, that rebellion, there is a little bit of that energy, probably because there is like a bit of a rebellious choice to move into the 5D. The 5D doesn't have rebellion in it, I wouldn't say, but in that process, a little bit, there is like, no, I'm making this active choice. I'm not choosing you. That's rebellious, a bit.
Yeah.
It's an internal
In a loving way, and like ultimately loving way,
you're
but it's
choosing love. You're choosing love, Yeah.
and that is the rebellion.
Yeah. Yeah. The rebellion that just kind of dissolves everything out of its, there's no bombs needed. It's just like the love. Yeah. The love diffusion. Infusion. Yeah.
Yay.
So good. Well, this is a good one. I like it.
Oh, great. I felt like we covered a lot there, and like, yeah, that was pretty
However long
awesome.
we've been talking. Okay. Well, thank you all so much for joining us for episode 6. And please like and share and subscribe and comment and spread the word. And we will see you here again next week with love from me to you and
me to you.
me
Me to you.
me to you and you and you and you.
And you and you.
Okay. Much love.